All right, are you ready for this one? You need to get started before you're done planning. I know this sounds like heresy or something coming from a planning kind of person. You expect me, the guy that's helping you plan out your business, get this all figured out so that you can go and be successful, and you're telling me to start before I'm done planning? What the heck? Listen, this is the only way you will be successful. If you're not familiar with this kind of approach, this section is going to just about blow your mind. I have literally had people read my books and they start to grasp this concept. One guy, I was told by a friend, she gave a guy a copy of my book, Being Agile in a Waterfall World. He read it. He came back to the office. He thanked her and quit. He quit because my book had helped him understand that he had for so long been putting off starting his business because he wanted to get it all right. And my book gave him the freedom to get started before he was done planning. So let's jump into this so that you can learn all about this. What's up, everyone? My name is Joseph Flahiff, and you are watching the Entrepreneur's Starter Kit. Let's go. All right. You've heard the old phrase, if you wait for all the stoplights to be green, you will never leave your driveway. But it's true, right? We sit around and we think when we're starting a business, well, I have to make sure this is right and that is right. I have to get this in place and that in place. Got to make sure we've got all these things done and make sure that everything's in place. You know what? There are very few things that you actually need to have in place before you launch your business. One of them is backup cash. So estimate that it's going to take twice as long as you think it's going to take to have revenue. But, other than that and a separate bank account for your business, probably having your business license done, though in some states, I believe, I'm not a lawyer, so don't quote me on this, you can do some of that retroactively. But there's not a whole lot you have to really have done. And to test your idea, you have to have even less than this. So don't wait for all the stoplights to be green. Get off your couch and let's get your business running. Come on, it's been your dream. Let's go. So how do you do this? Do you know how a plane flies from Honolulu to San Francisco? Sometimes you might think, it's got autopilot, right? So they turn on the autopilot in Honolulu and they set it and forget it, right? And it just takes them straight on one path from Honolulu. Wait, we were going to San Francisco. We ended up in Portland. What happened? Well, the problem with setting your autopilot in Honolulu and not changing it along the long flight to San Francisco is there's stuff that happens. There's wind that blows you around, and there's air currents, thermoclines in the air. All these things will conspire to blow you off course. So they don't do it that way. The autopilot system does not work like that. You don't set it and forget it. What you do is you set it and it constantly adjusts. Check this out. So you leave from Honolulu and you fly out a little ways, and then the autopilot says, I'm going to check again. Am I on course? Oh, wait, we've blown a little bit off course. Let me reset. Now we come back this way a little bit. See how it kind of did a little jagged line there? And then we nope, we have to, now we're going to recheck it again. Nope. Now we're going this way. Now we're going to go a little bit that way and this way to get us trying to get back on track until you land, right? If you think about it, you do the same thing in your car. You just do micro adjustments. If you were to get in your car and start driving straight down the street, what would happen? You would either drive across the center line and smash into the car in front that's coming your direction, or drive into the ditch, because you're constantly making micro adjustments with your hands back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back, trying to get there. You're micro adjusting your speed so that you don't slam into the car in front of you. There's a million. My one of my daughters is learning to drive right now, and I'm very much aware of all of the minute little things that we do without thinking about them, because I have to talk with her about them, right? You have to pay attention. Oh, look, the road's going up a little bit. That means you need to give a little bit more gas. You're making micro adjustments all the time. You're going to need to do the same thing with your business as you go. So why would you wait to get everything perfect before you go? Probably right now you're going, well, I won't. I guess I don't have to, Joseph, because, you know, because you said so. I'm thinking about it now. I only need these 50 things to be in line. I bet you need fewer than that. Let's talk a little bit more. Imagine yourself deciding, all right, I am going to build my product. I'm going to build a line of furniture. And that furniture is going to be built. I'm going to design the entire living room set, a couch, a love seat, and a little coffee table that goes with it all, or whatever, something like that. So I'm going to design it. I'm going to build it all. I'm going to try it out, and then I'm going to send it out into the world. And maybe that takes me 6 months to do. And here we got the timeline: design, build, test, and release. And there you go. That's what we're going to do. That's kind of a traditional model of building things. Maybe it would only take you a month or 2 months to do this for the furniture. But if you're going to design all the furniture, yeah, it's going to take you a while. What I'm suggesting is you take a little bites approach to it. And instead of deciding I have to do all of it, decide to do one tiny little test. See if people want furniture made out of bubble wrap. Maybe they don't. Maybe they want furniture that's still actually made out of cloth, or maybe they want furniture that's made out of leather or whatever. What you want to test, like we talked about in the lean startup section, you want to test the riskiest hypothesis in your business. So test those ideas out. And then you want to learn from that and do another test. And then you want to learn and test and learn. And so you're taking these micro bites instead of thinking you have to get a big thing all completed, thinking I have to finish the entire bedroom suite or the entire living room suite of furniture. I am going to finish one little piece. What's the smallest piece that I can do that's going to get me solid information about this and feedback on it? And then I'm going to test, and I'm going to test, and I'm going to test. It's an interesting concept, and it's esoteric for you right now, but let's break it down a little bit further. What you're wanting to do is constantly get feedback and constantly improve. So there's two words that we use interchangeably, and they're not interchangeable. Those two words are iterative and incremental. You probably figured that out from the top of the slide. But they're very, very different. And they're used at different times. You'll want to use both of them, and sometimes you'll use a combination of them. But let's talk about them here in each in turn. So iterative is great when you've got an idea, but you don't know exactly what you want. You pretty much know, I know that I want to draw this or do a painting of this girl with a pearl earring. So I'm going to start by drawing a charcoal sketch of her, and then I'm going to block some color into that sketch, or I'll do a sketch or do another sketch on a canvas now and block the color in so that I can get some sense of the balance of colors. I'm a painter, so I kind of have this idea. Get some balance of the colors and the shapes. What kind of shapes am I developing? And then I'll refine it and finalize what I'm doing. And if you're not a realist painter, I'm not a realist painter, you still do the same kind of process. You're sketching, you're getting some ideas out, you're blocking, and then you get it to a point where you feel it's done. This is the process of discovery, right? You're creating something as you're going along, but you're creating the whole thing in one piece. So that's iterative. I'm iterating. I have the thing, and then I refine it more, and then I refine it more. Incremental is completely different than that. Incremental is great when I have an idea and I know exactly what it is that I want. Exactly what it is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to produce the first piece first, all the way down to completion. Everything, 100%. I worked on a building called the Seattle Cancer Care Alliance. That building is kind of a crescent, like a quarter of a circle. And it's actually designed, there's a larger design that's actually a U shape. But they only built half of the U, so it's like this crescent. And the wall where the U would continue is made of this like thick corrugated steel, and then it's walled on the inside. But on the outside, the wall is actually made to be removed. because they wanted to build all the way to completion the first phase of the Cancer Care Alliance building. And then it's sometime in the future, and it's, 12 years on now, and they haven't built the second half of it yet, but I've heard rumblings that they might. At some point, though, they can scrape off that that steel sheeting and continue the building. It was already planned that way. That is incremental. So you see here, I painted this woman all the way in detail because I wanted to get that piece done. And then I've painted the next chunk of it. And then I painted the last chunk of it. So that's the idea of incremental. You're adding on bit by bit to it, completed 100%. So iterative, I'm delivering the whole thing and in kind of a rough form, and then I deliver a refinement of that, and then a refinement of that until we're done. Incremental, I deliver an increment, and then I add some more to it, and then I add some more to it. Your product or service may lend itself to one or the other of these. You might want to just try out a sketch or a rough outline of what it is that you're doing or producing. Or you may know exactly what it is, but it's better to create just a small piece of it. What's actually more likely is you actually don't know either of those things. You don't know what your customers want, and you don't know exactly how to make it. And so you need to smash up the two. You need to do iterative and incremental, not or incremental. So this is actually particularly good when you have a customer and a creator, but it's just as good for you as an entrepreneur to say, let's start with the basics, some ideas. So first thing you do is you sketch this thing up and you show it to your customer, and your customer says, yeah, that looks okay. It's not really what I wanted though. I was thinking something else. And so you draw a second sketch. See how, if I had gone all the way down to painting the painting of this is obviously the Mona Lisa, painted all that detail, I would have spent a ton of time get this feedback from my customer base. Where if I can just get a high level idea out there, and this is what we talked about with an MVP, I'm not going to use this thing in the future necessarily, but I want to get it out there so I can get the idea in front of my customers, so I can start to get some feedback and understand what they want and what they need, how they'll benefit from it. And I got feedback, and they didn't want that, they wanted this. And so I do this other sketch and I show it to my customer and think, oh, yes, that's it. Keep going with that idea. I like that idea. Now look, the first thing that I produced was the face, because the face is going to give you the most feedback about the entire painting, right? I didn't produce a shoulder. The shoulder is not going to tell you much. Your customer is not going to get a lot of value. They're not going to care much. This face, they might just buy that. I'm just the face. I don't know. But you get the idea. The highest value thing I did first, because that gives me the most feedback. It gives the customer the most satisfaction from it. They understand it now better. And then I do the next most important thing. But you see what happened? I did a new increment in an iterative way in this. Now I've just done a sketch of the next increment. I didn't finish it all the way. I did a sketch of the next increment. And the one that was a sketch before, look, this was a sketch. Now I do the block color. So I come back in and I take the feedback from my customer and I fold that in and I take it another layer further. And I expand a little bit out and get more feedback. And now I get feedback on this square of the person. Again, the most important pieces. I've got the face, I've got the back of the head, the most important and interesting pieces of this painting. And so I get the feedback, oh yeah, that's great, keep going in that direction. So now we take, the first piece goes to further refinement. The second piece gets blocked in. This is block the colors in to start get some idea. The third piece gets sketched in. It's a quick and dirty. We're getting it out there. Don't try. And there's a temptation when you get to some place like this to get everything to the final stage, to get everything to this stage here. But don't do it. Take this iterative and incremental approach. You'll get better products in the end because you'll get feedback on things. So then you do it again, get more feedback, you do it again, you get more feedback. The least important part of this entire painting is the woman's back over here. This is not a very interesting piece of the painting. This piece has the pearl earring. This is the front of her clothing. I mean, it gives the sense of depth of the person. The face obviously gives the most expression and emotion. So you start with the most important, this part right here. You move to the next most important, this part right here that has the pearl earring in it. Then you go to the third most important, and finally the least important piece of it. You might even, if it was kind of blurred a little bit, you might be able to sell this right where it is and stop. But maybe they decided you wanted to go a little bit further. So that's the idea. You should be able to break your product or service apart and deliver it in small pieces quickly. And let's look at this from another perspective, right? So we've got one perspective on it of iterative and incremental, but how the heck do you do that? So historically, we've looked at the things you probably have been looking at. I know I did when I was starting. Looked at your business as this thing. I need all this stuff in place. And it's this group of blocks. Imagine these blocks are all of the things that you have to have in place in order to have your product or service go to market. Maybe it's a medical device, or you're providing some kind of service or something like that. And you have to have all these elements in it. And in your mind, because you need them all, there's very little definition between the elements. What I want you to do is I want you to be able to break that down. You need to take a step back and put some definition between the elements so that they are not all mishmashed together, but they're discrete. You want them to be as independent as possible. In an ideal world, you could take any one of these squares now, or rectangles, and start with that and implement that and get going with that. That's the idea behind it. It's kind of a complicated thing, and when you get to this point, let's talk so that we can work on how to make this breakdown. But it's important that you learn to make these pieces discrete, independent, right? And each piece has to have some value to it. Now, what you're going to find is there are some pieces in this that are more valuable than others. See these two that just flashed red? Those are the more valuable pieces. And these are the next valuable pieces. So you've got two different sets of value. The first ones here that are most important. The second ones there that are next important. Now, the way we had it before, everything was mishmashed, and we weren't able to put anything. We weren't able to separate them out enough and implement things separately. So now that we've created some separation and the ability to prioritize things separately, now we have some amazing freedoms. Check this out. If you have created sufficient independence between these things, you should be able to take those two flashing red ones and build and deliver those things first. This is your first increment, right? You're going to create one piece of this that is kind of a high-level sketched increment that you send out there and start to get feedback from your customers. The next thing that you're going to do, though, is then do those next pieces. They're the next most valuable pieces to your customer. And so you're going to put those out into the world and see what the feedback is on them. And then you can build the next most important ones. And then finally, the least important ones. And what this does is it does a lot of things. One, it delivers value to your customers fast. It gets your product or service in your customers' hands quickly. Two, it gets cash in your pocket quickly. It allows you to get your products out there and start funding your company instead of having to borrow money for it, right? I'm all about bootstrapping. So this gets you cash flowing quickly. The third thing it does is it reduces your ROI. I can go into the math on why, but it reduces the timeline for your ROI because you're not waiting for everything to get done before you start seeing revenue generation. And then the fourth thing that it does is it gives you the option to stop. When you had everything mishmashed together and were waiting for the last moment, you didn't have the option to stop here. But if you truly have created independence between these elements and you're able to release that piece and then that piece and then that piece, You might just get to the point and go, maybe I don't need that. Look at it this way. If the first 2 releases gave you, let's see, 25, 30, 40% of the value that your customers are going to get out of your product, and then those next 3 chunks that we threw in there gave you decreasingly valued pieces of the product or service. So you want to see how this works? Maybe 10% of the total the total possible value to your customer comes out of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So that's like what, 12% here, 12 or 13, and this is like 9, and this is 9, 8 or something like that. So now you've got this amount of value. You may get out here and go, okay, we're doing things of decreasing value even further, but I guess they're okay. When you get to these, now you start asking yourself the hard questions. You know, this is bringing us, this is the 80-20, right? Here's up here, 20% of the stuff that you build is going to give you 80% of your profits. So somewhere in here is 80% of the value to your customers. The last 80% of this stuff only gives you 20%. So this last little bit down here, maybe that's like less than 10%. Maybe you don't do those things. Maybe instead you add another product or service that, let's do this, highlighter pen. Another product or service that has this kind of a value curve to it, right? So now we've got another product that I can add. So instead of spending my time on these things here, I reassign my resources, my time, my service, my people to this other project, this other new endeavor. Or I just cut back and I just keep charging on these things because that's where the value is coming from, right? So now you get the idea of it really gives you the ability to be adaptable. All right, so just quickly summarizing the key benefits of iterative, incremental, value-based business development. 1, it reduces your risk. Very quickly, you get feedback on whether this sucker's going to work or not. And you get that feedback not on a finished thing that you spent ages building, but on an initial idea, a sketch, a draft. Delivery speed and time to market. It gets you to market faster than anyone else because you're able to get something out there because you went through the discipline to be able to think of things discreetly. Okay, it gives you increased predictability because when you were in the old model where everything was going to go out in this one big chunk, you really had no idea whether things were actually going to work in the end. You know, any one of those tests along the bottom there, those arrows that said test 1, test 2, test 3, any one of those could have gone to heck in a handbasket. But the other ones were working already. And fixing that one piece isn't as hard as fixing some piece in the middle of this hodgepodge of big square. So it increases your productivity. It improves your product market fit because you're looking at it in small pieces along the way. You're able to make fine-tune adjustments, or even at the beginning, you're able to make wholesale adjustments quickly because you haven't put a whole bunch of investment into it. It gives you the ability to manage changing priorities. If your customers go, oh, this is great, I would love this other thing, but you thought it was further down in the value stack, you can move it up because you created independence between those things. It creates increased visibility for both you and your customers, puts you in the market faster. It creates increased visibility of your product and service development process. It creates improved productivity because you're only working on those things that are most important. And so in the long run, you're able to actually produce more because you produce less, right? You maximize the amount of work not done. Look at this. This is a perfect example of maximizing the amount of work not done. If I don't do these because they're not producing as much value, that means I'm getting more overall value because I didn't do something. I maximize the amount of work not done. Got it? And it improves morale. If you're for yourself, if you're just a solopreneur, if you are a solopreneur rock on. It improves your morale because you're making progress, right? Remember, I talked about progress being one of those fundamental human needs. Progress is important. The same is true if you have a team. Progress is important. That everyone is able to see that they're making progress will make a world of difference for them. So there you have it, the key benefits of iterative, incremental, value-based business development. Thank you for listening today. I know this was a long one, but wow, listen to it again because there was a lot in there for you. I will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.